TaxNet Live is moving. Sundays are done, and we're now live Friday at noons. The change is not administrative, it's intentional. Hey, my name is Andrew Samaniego with TaxNet Consultants, and thank you for joining us. And this video, we wanted to kind of explain kind of why we're moving TaxNet Live from to Friday at noon from Sundays. I was talking with my son Andrew, and he's joined me for the last couple of episodes, and I was talking to him about this, and he's like, Dad, we should do this on Friday at noon. You know, there's a lot of people who might be able to watch this during their lunch break, and you know, people are getting notices throughout the week. You know, once Friday comes around, a lot of people think, well, I'm not going to be thinking about tax stuff, but you know what? That's actually when we do think about tax stuff, especially if you're somebody that has tax problems. So I don't want to get too much into details, because the person I want to introduce that now is going to be the co-host with me with TaxNet Live. So instead of just seeing me every week, you're going to see him as well, is my son, Andrew Samaniego, also enrolled agent. How you doing, Andrew?
Yeah, it's great to be here. Now you have almost a twin of you.
You got almost the exact same glasses. Isn't that hilarious?
Same glasses, almost same shirt. Yeah.
Oh, same shirt. But today I'm wearing my Coast Guard shirt. For those of you guys that don't know, I was actually on the East Coast last week. Had a chance to do. We actually expanded our offices to the East Coast in Connecticut, and was able to do some contents and filming out there. Met with a couple of clients while we were out there, so it was just it was a blast. But the most important thing was I was able to actually see Bella, my daughter, who actually goes to the U.S. Coast Guard Academy there, Andrew's sister. So
yeah, I'm a Navy grad, so you know we don't have any beef with Coast Guard, but still not as good as Navy in my opinion.
Obviously. So as Andrew said, the person sitting next to me, let me just talk a little bit about Andrew, kind of give an introduction. If you don't know who Andrew is, you know, Andrew Samaniego, my son, he's a licensed enrolled agent. And as he said, he's also a Navy Academy graduate. Went to the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis. He once he got out of the academy, he commissioned in the United States Navy, and actually was in the United States Navy 5 or 6 years. But recently, as of last year, he actually became an enrolled agent when he got out of the Navy, and started to build his own tax resolution practice down there in San Diego. And what's great is actually him and his spouse, Kanoe, they're actually moving to Monterey. So that now they're actually taking their business and expanding it into the Monterey area, and where he's going to, you know, one of his specialties is dealing with military families, dealing with tax problems, and the military lifestyles, what a military lifestyle actually creates with PCS moves, multiple state filings, VA benefit questions, things like that. Andrew is like your go-to guy for that, because he came from that. So talk to me, Andrew. Tell me a little bit more about this trip to Monterey.
So yeah, so Kanoe is going to go to Naval Postgraduate School. So in the Navy, like they have a lot of education opportunities, and one of those opportunities that she received is getting her master's degree in systems engineering. So we were packing up the family from here in San Diego and driving, I think it's 7 hours up there. We'll be spending the next 2 to 3 years while she gets her degree, and we expand our practice to Monterey. So it's going to be great. We're actually going to be living in Pebble Beach, but I'll be serving the Monterey community, and we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, that's actually going to be really, really neat. You know, Andrew, I gave a little introduction about you, and I kind of wanted to show, you know, TaxNet Live. You know, one of the things that we are doing on the show, we're answering questions we got throughout the week. Yeah. We're going to be sharing successes of clients, even failures, because that actually happens too. Maybe dumb things that we see that are happening out there, and we both see a lot of it. But today, I kind of really wanted to talk to Andrew a little bit more for you to get to know who he is. Like I said, Andrew when he decided to become an enrolled agent and specialize in tax resolution, one of the things I told him is that what he needs to do is really learn how to build his own practice. Obviously, I'm providing some assistance, some guidance, some mentorship, but he's done a really good job building his practice there in San Diego. Actually, he's one of our first licensees of the tax debt consultant brand. And you'll see a lot of the same branding that he's starting to use that we have, which is great for both of us, right? Now, Andrew, I have a question for you. Tell them who you are. Obviously, you're a Navy Academy grad. You were serving in the Navy. Why did you decide to become an enrolled agent? I mean, you even know, I remember you had started asking me questions about it back a few years ago.
Right.
Why did you decide to go that route?
It's very complicated, multi-part question. Obviously, we knew being in the Navy, both being in the Navy, that trying to have a family life is nearly impossible just due to military constraints and the fact that one might be deployed and one might stay, and it's just hard to grow roots or build a family. So we needed something more flexible. But to get into like the kind of the tax side of things, I knew obviously you have your practice up in Redlands, and I was looking at multiple opportunities. So I was thinking, maybe tech, maybe real estate, maybe that cyber community. And this is all the time when AI was rising, and so you started seeing major layoffs in the tech community. And I'm like, okay, that's not a good route to go. And like, let's see what my dad's doing. And yeah, obviously you recommended the opportunity of becoming an enrolled agent. And one thing about an enrolled agent is they don't know just about taxes, but all about businesses as well. They know all the different entity types, how to structure your companies, and basically the basics of how businesses should work. And that really interested me as being a quantitative economics major. And so I was like, you know what? Let me just get my enrolled agents and then my enrolled agents license and see where that takes me. And then eventually that led to looking at all the opportunities in the tax industry. There's preparation, advisory, and resolution, obviously. And as entrepreneurs, we always have that shiny object syndrome where we kind of want to go to the new opportunity. But, resolution, there's always people with tax problems who actually really, really need help. And also knowing your history with tax problems, I thought, this is probably a good opportunity to just kind of bring myself in. And I know being in the military, again, a lot of problems with military in different states and the IRS with their tax issues. So I saw a huge market opportunity, and that's how it kind of brought me here.
Excellent. Well, and I know, you've started to build a pretty nice practice down there, and you're starting, which is, it only seems natural. You started getting a lot of military families, and I know the military clientele, the tax profile of a military family is quite different. Everything from heck, your own family, multi-state returns, right?
Right. So, for example, you have
tell me a little bit more about the whole military stuff. What they have.
Yeah, military people with tax situation is very complicated because you're dealing with multiple states. So Hawaii and California, or New York and Florida, and where you're domiciled versus where you're a resident. And so all these different rules apply. And a lot of people are thinking, oh, there's the Military Spouses Residency Relief Act, which basically says that, you claim whatever state that you joined the Navy or the military from. But there's been many more acts that Congress has approved after that. And the options for military and their spouses have generally increased on where you can be taxed. And a lot of people don't know these rules. There's not even many people who teaches this kind of stuff. And so I figured, I'm going to dive into it and, figure out what problems that our military have, and then what solutions that is given to us by, Congress. And that's how I kind of went into that, scenario.
Yeah. And another thing, Andrew, I remember you talking about this. One thing that you've noticed, and it's funny because I've already noticed it with your sister, that a lot of military especially when you're dealing with officers or even enlisted people. They start investing. They start buying properties in different states.
Right.
I remember. I remember a lot of your classmates, 2019 graduates, were actually had real estate careers at the same time they had military career. They had basically side businesses or side gigs. They would say making extra money. And I remember a lot of enlisted people do that. You know, they might be Uber drivers. So there's like multiple things going on, and a lot of times they don't even realize what's going on.
Yeah, and I have multiple friends right now who are like almost full-time real estate agents and being, you know, officers in the Navy. And I'm like, how in the world are you doing both? But they are doing that, and they have, you know, rental properties, small businesses, and again, in multiple different states. So you're dealing with these tax returns, and there are multiple tax returns, but sometimes only the taxed in one state. And so it's important because California is a perfect example. They will tax you if you got income in California, regardless on where you're currently living. And if you're a resident of California versus if you're a non-resident California, it's two different avenues to go through. But then again, there's some sub-arching rules that apply, and people get into big problems with these type of states.
Yeah. It's you know, the more and more I saw, and I remember back when I was doing a lot of returns, which my practice is primarily resolution. You know, we'd get military families, and you just have these multi-state scenarios, and it's just like, well, I remember when I first did your returns 5 or 6 years ago. I'm like, okay, now I got to go deal with the state of Hawaii now, because Kanoe's from Hawaii, right?
Right.
You know, how do we figure this out? So bottom line, if you're in the military and you think doing your taxes on TurboTax is going to work, you may want to reconsider and get some advice from Andrew regarding that.
Yeah, just get a free consult. You can go to militarytaxpro.com.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, just a free consult just to see, like, am I doing my taxes right? And you can just kind of explain to me your situation, and then I can at least guide you in the right direction. Or if you just want us to handle it for you, yeah, of course we can do that.
Sounds good, Andrew. That's Military Tax Pros, Pro or Pros?
Just Pro.
militarytaxpros.com. So what I'll do is I'll pull this up so you can kind of take a look at it. militarytaxpro.com. And so for some reason my screen sharing is not working. So anyways, again, Andrew, you know, thanks for sharing your story. And again, this show is literally going to be about us just kind of sitting down, probably just drinking our iced tea, for people to realize is that we are real people. And maybe this is the thing I do want to talk about. And Andrew, me and Andrew have talked about this so much, is that one thing that's really bad about the industry that we're in the industry of helping people with tax problems. And one of the biggest challenges that we're seeing right now is that when there is a big problem, there tends to be opportunity seekers that are looking to take advantage of people in a bad situation. Mm-hmm. And when somebody has unfiled tax returns, large balances due, and they don't know what to do, there's people out there trying to take advantage of that. And the IRS warns people about this, especially when you see those offer and compromise mills, and you hear it on the radio, right? Settle for pennies on the dollar. Fresh start program. You see them. But the problem is when you call those people, you are talking to a salesperson, period. If you've ever seen the movie Wall Street or Boiler Room, the stockbrokers that are trying to do a fast sale, trying to scam people out of their money. Street. Yeah, that's who you're calling. And their job is to scare the living daylight out of you, to get you to do something right there for the biggest fee possible. And a lot of times what happens is that the sales pitch sounds great. It sounds like they're going to save you, but they're selling you something that you might not even qualify for. And I was telling Andrew about one of our clients that had hired 3 different companies, spent over $40,000 over 3 different companies, because they kept on saying that he qualified for something that he didn't qualify for, but nobody told him that. And when he came to me, he was with the 3rd company, and they weren't answering the phone anymore after he had paid them a significant amount of money. So he ends up calling me. I brought him in, and I sat down with them and had a conversation with them and looked at what he had. And he said, well, this is what they're doing for me. They were doing the Fresh Start program. And I looked at his numbers, and I told him right there, I'm like, dude, you don't qualify for the program. He goes, what do you mean? It's like, you have too much equity in your home to qualify for this program. You have more equity in your home than the tax debt that you owe. The IRS is never going to settle this debt for you. Settle. And he was just, I shouldn't say he was surprised, but he was just pissed. That's the simplest way. 3 different companies, all this money, and just upset. Why didn't somebody just tell him that up front? And that's what we're here to do. We're real people. I'm the tax guy that didn't file his tax returns for over 8 years, and got myself into tax problems and got saved by Ernie. That's who I am. Andrew's my son, who was, didn't know he was living in my nightmare while this was going on, because he was just going to school and doing his thing. Served this country, and now he's doing the same thing. Andrew wrote a book called you have a copy of your book there, Andrew? I was actually looking for it.
Yeah. So it's called IRS Battle Plan, Guide to Winning Your Tax War. Yeah.
So go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, and it's 21 strategic steps to defeat your IRS debts. It's honestly like a really good first start if you have a tax problem and you want to see, one, like what are kind of like the options and what are kind of the generic principles in order to resolve it either on your own or with help.
There you go. So we're real people. I live in the city of Redlands, California. That's our corporate office, Redlands, California. San Bernardino, Riverside. For you people that are in the California area, if you don't know where that is, we live in the middle of Southern California. That's where we're at. So the other thing that we're really big at too, and that one of the big specialties that we have is we deal with the California Franchise Tax Board, or as I like to call, Cali Claw. Wrote a book about that. This is the book, Shut Down Cali Claw. You can get a free copy of this book at CaliClaw.com, actually. But one of the things that a lot of people don't tell you, right, Andrew, and we talk about this all the time, is that when you got an IRS problem, if you're live in the state of California, lived in the state of California, maybe you don't live here no more, and you got a tax problem, there's a very good chance you have a franchise tax board or Cali Claw tax problem.
That includes everyone who was stationed in California. If you bought a house here, they're going to come after you, believe it or not. So it's best to make sure if you have an FTB account, open it up and see if there's anything on you, because sometimes they'll send notices to your last address. And if you moved, obviously you won't get it. But yeah, that includes you military folk as well. I'm
glad you brought that up, Andrew. That's actually really important because one of the biggest, we get a lot of people that have IRS or the state of California tax problems, that franchise tax board. Mm-hmm. And Andrew brought up something that's really important. If you own a house in California, still own a house in California, maybe don't live in California, the state of California is going to expect a tax return. And maybe you moved out of California. Maybe you were military that lived in California, kept your property, and decided it got stationed out in Florida. And you start you're filing your IRS returns. You're not filing a Florida return. There's no return, but you decide not to file your California return. Guess what's happening? Mm-hmm. California knows you didn't file your return. They're expecting a return. And here's what happens all the time. They don't contact you a couple of months later. They don't contact you the next year. It's usually a couple of years down the road that they're like questioning, where's your tax return? And by that time, you hadn't filed in 2 or 3 years. Now you got penalties and interest for not filing for those 2 or 3 years. And you're thinking to yourself, well, I don't need to file a California return. I don't live in California, but you owned a property in California. So they're going to expect those returns.
Or if you had like a license in California, like a professional license, and they expect you to have income in California. Yeah. So very important you file that non-resident return when you move out. It'll save your butt.
I'm glad you brought that up. And what he's talking about is that if you have any type of occupational license, it's actually called in the state of California an occupational tax assessment. So basically, anything occupational, nurse, doctor, insurance agent, real estate agent, barber, cosmetologist, anything that requires a California occupational license, if you do not file a return in California and still have your license, they're going to be looking for a return. And if you don't, there's a very good chance they will create a substitute for a return, basically a made-up number based on the of what they believe you should have earned based on that occupation. And a simple story that a client that I dealt with, we had a nurse that contacted me, had his entire life savings. It was almost $50,000 of life savings wiped out. When he moved to North Carolina, or it's one of the Carolinas, and I forgot which one. And what was interesting about this case, he's living in the Carolinas, calls me up, says that the state of California took money. And I was confused because he lived in California. So I started asking questions. I'm like, did you ever live in California at one time? And he's like, well, I did over 20 years ago. And I said, oh, interesting. What were you doing 20 years ago? I was a nurse in California. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I said, well, where have you lived since then? He goes, well, my visa expired, so I moved back to the Philippines. Mm. So his visa expired, work visa he had. He moved back to the Philippines and had lived there for 20 years. But he always kept his license active because he always thought he would come back to California to go to work. So he didn't want his license to expire. So he did the continuing education, did what he had to do to keep his license active. Well, never came back to California, but he did come back to the U.S. and went to the Carolinas. Right. And the minute he opened up his bank account and put his life savings, because that was his life savings, he was going to start a new life in the U.S., but in the Carolinas, guess who came and swiped the money? The Franchise Tax Board. Because they did an assessment of every single year for 20 years based on a nursing, the average nurse made in the state of California during that time frame. That was his assessment. Now, the good news is we were able to get all that money back from him, for him. In that situation, we didn't have to do the returns. We just literally had to start showing passports when he moved, when he moved back. So it was a different avenue for him to be able to get that money back. But again, they took money, and it took a while to get that money back. And the good news, he got the money back. So I'm glad you brought that up, Andrew.
Yeah. And again, it's actually one of the questions that a client sent me. And I get this question all the time. It's usually the first conversation we have. And one of the questions is, why is IRS saying I owe more or way more than what I actually made? And again, sometimes either California or the IRS will submit these substitute for returns. And if you didn't file a return, they don't know how much you made. Sometimes they do based off your wage income. But if you're like a self-employed person, they don't know how much you made, but they'll average it out and whatever they think it is. And they don't include any of your deductions that you would have gotten, including your expenses for your businesses. So that's 100%. One of the reasons.
100%. Well, Andrew, we're coming into, we got about 5 minutes left. Anything you want to share that maybe was on top of your mind this last week?
Yeah. So recently I just got a client, and he came in with two different letters. One was from the IRS, one's from the FTB. One from the IRS was the famous or infamous letter 11, right? He came in with 2 days to spare. In that situation, if someone came into your office and they came in with a letter 11 and that was about to expire, what should they do immediately?
Are you asking me? I'm sorry.
Yes, I am. Yeah.
So they got the letter 11. They had 2 day. They had 2 days to say that again.
Before it expires, the 30-day time limit expires for their CPP.
You need to react like really fast, because if you got a letter 11, the thing you want to do the minute you get that letter 11 final notice of levy, you'll see it on there. Look at the date on there. That's the most important thing, because it's typically 30 days. 30 days prior to, you have 30 days to respond to that letter. What you need to do is just give one of us a call, period. Because what happens if you do not respond to that letter immediately? This is at the point the IRS, and I call it the Bruno Doctrine. This is where the gates open. The German Shepherd is coming to bite you. So when you get that letter, if you don't respond back within 30 days of that letter, that dog's coming to bite you. The IRS basically says, okay, we've notified you, we've contacted you, you've did not respond or did not do anything about your tax debt. So we're coming after you hard. Now they can do bank levies or wage garnishments. So you have to, that 30-day time frame, you need to respond. Give one of us a call immediately, because we can actually delay that time frame. We can delay the time frame. And basically what we're doing is we're going to request a collection due process appeal if we can't resolve it in 24 hours or whatever that short time frame is. Probably can't, but we need to buy you more time, and we can buy you more time. The challenge is that people say, well, can I file it myself? Well, you could, but if you do it incorrectly, there's a lot of bad things that could potentially happen.
The repercussions isn't worth it. The consequences of you filing wrong is not worth it.
I've seen it multiple times. So
right.
It's just the most important thing to know is that do not when you get that certified letter, you're probably at that letter 11, that CP90. If you get that letter, you got to respond. Up until that point, probably every other letter you've disregarded, didn't pay attention to. You thought, it's just another letter. No, this is the final letter you have to deal with. So. Yeah,
and I like to use our characters that we created in the tax underworld here. It's like at first you're just fighting the penalty pig, right? You're just fighting, the penalties on interest, on more penalties for failure to file and failure to pay. And then once you hit that letter 11, that's like the handoff between the penalty pig to the collector, and that collector is what's going to come after you next. So, yeah.
Well, thank Andrew. Bottom line, as we wrap this show up, if you're watching this right now, if you've literally sat down watching this and watched all of it, either you're my mom that's watching this, which I doubt. You're watching this because you already know you have a problem. You have a tax problem. You haven't filed tax returns. So here's the thing. Don't wait until next Friday. If you need help, reach out to either one of us. Give us a call. I had their phone numbers. I'm trying to realize how to use this. You can give us a call, 570-1103. We answer 24 hours a day. That's the best thing you can possibly do. Is just give us a call right now. If you want to book, if you want to get Andrew's book, or you can reach him, especially if you're military, you need to reach him. You can reach him at SamaniegosTaxSolutions.com, and pick up my book on taxdebtbook.com. So,
and if you want direct access to this book, you can go to irsbattleplan.com, and you'll get a free downloadable copy sent directly to your email. So
I'll make sure I have your that in a banner for next week, Andrew. But bottom line, I appreciate you guys joining us. Again, this is just supposed to be a conversation. There's no pitch. Oh, and that's the other thing too. If you give us a call, we don't have a pitch for you. We ain't trying to. We're not the boiler room Wall Street trying to get you to close. Our job is just to listen to what you're going through and see if we can help. And if we can help and you don't need to hire us, guess what? We're going to tell you. You don't need to hire us. You can do this yourself. People are shocked every day when they call me and I tell them, you know what? You don't need to hire nobody to do this. Here's what you need to do. And I tell them what they need to do. Because here's the thing. We're here to help people that need our help, not to take advantage of somebody that does not need our help and they can handle it themselves. So until next time, We'll see you on Friday. It will be actually live on Friday, Friday at noon. And again, Andrew, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for co-hosting the show with me. And until then, we'll see you next week.
Until next time.